The purpose of this video is to explain the details of the literature review, kind of talk a little bit about what it is, go through the assignment sheet, and then show an example lit review. So for your literature review, you can look at the details of this in one of two places. You can go through all of the specifics from the full assignment sheet for this project, where you start in the section of reviewing the literature. And this section of the assignment sheet is where you will find the details on what you need to include in your lit review. But sometimes when looking at the entire assignment sheet, I know that that can get overwhelming. So I have also linked to you guys in the LMS right here, the literature review quick guide assignment sheet. This will take you to a shorter assignment sheet that might be a little less overwhelming to look at, but it has the same content. It's just boiled down a bit more. The goal of it is to see what research already exists on a topic that you are interested in. So the research that already exists is things that people have already written about, scholarship or articles that are out there. And your goal for your lit review is to be a reader. You are a reader and a summarizer, and that's really the goal of the bulk of the lit review, is read what's out there, find out how it overlaps, and then report that back in a review of the literature. That's why it's called a lit review, because the articles you're reading are referred to as literature and you are doing a review. Not a review in the sense of an evaluation, but more in the sense of a summary. There is an opportunity for evaluation the more involved of a project you have. So if you are asked to do a literature review, maybe, in a master's program, or you're writing a doctoral thesis, then there might be some room for evaluation there, absolutely. But for our purposes at this stage of research, all I want you to do is find some articles, read them, summarize them, and report the information back in your lit review. So your lit review has, I would say, three main parts outside of the formatting that will be required. The lit review, if you're thinking about the full scope of the project we're working on, it's the introduction to your project. So what you are writing for your literature review will be included in the final third stage of this project. So you can kind of think about this as a draft for that final part of your project. You should have already selected a narrow focus. Now, when you did the APA exploration document, you looked at some possibilities, and hopefully you've narrowed something down. That narrow focus under the umbrella of education is the topic you should be looking up as you are trying to find articles. You're going to look for 3 to 5 articles about your topic. Now, these do not have to be scholarly articles. They absolutely can, but they should be at the very least credible sources that come from places that focus on education. Trade journals for educators, again, scholarly articles are fine, or education-based magazines. I have a list of places in the official assignment sheet that might be most helpful for you to start at. Our college catalogs all but one of these databases. So if you do go to Inside Higher Ed, there might be an article cap that you are allowed to look at. That's the one that we don't catalog. But all of these other ones might lead you to some really great articles that you will have full access to. So you want to find 3 to 5 sources published on your topic. And I would definitely go back to your APA exploration document to look at some of the brainstorming that you did in order to find subtopics, because what your literature review is going to be is 4 paragraphs, an introduction paragraph, and then 3 review paragraphs. And each one of those review paragraphs is going to have its own topic, just like a body paragraph would. You know, if you're writing an essay, you have a subtopic in your essay that you're focusing that body paragraph on. You're doing the same thing here. So you kind of want to, you either want to let the research guide you, or you want to know maybe already before you're researching what you hope to find. Once you've found your sources and you've read them, then I would encourage you to create a synthesis matrix to identify the subtopics or themes. But if you already know what they are, you might be able to skip this step. If you want to create a synthesis matrix, I am going to post a video next week. If you're already at this stage in the week that we're, currently just starting the literature review, then please feel free to email me for that content early. I have it ready. I can send it to you right away. But if you use a synthesis matrix, it's a great tool to write your lit review because it organizes all of the information in a very concise way. And then it's just a matter of pulling out columns from your synthesis matrix and putting that information into a paragraph. Your lit review is probably going to be something like 2 to 3 pages of written content. It's going to have an introduction. It's going to have 3 paragraphs where you are really just under that subtopic, finding out what do the articles you've read say about this one subtopic, and you're summarizing all of that information in a paragraph. So you are not giving any of your own arguments or thoughts or evaluations on the topic. You are just writing a summary. For example, if I'm writing my literature review and my subtopic is maybe online English courses at the community college level, I might have 3 subtopics below that where I'm going to focus my lit review. Maybe I want to know about like discussion forums in an online English course. Maybe I want to have another paragraph on providing effective feedback in an online English course. And then maybe I want to have another paragraph on student-to-student engagement in an online English course. So you have your narrow focus for your project, and then your lit review needs 3 subtopics. Writing an outline for yourself, using a synthesis matrix, having some kind of plan will help you organize your ideas, especially as you start reading your articles. And especially if your articles are significantly overlapping, because the biggest issue that everyone has when they're writing a lit review is organizing the research they're finding. It can get really jumbled up really quickly, so you have to figure out an effective way to organize that research. Your lit review is going to have an introduction and 3 paragraphs. When I say introduction, I really just mean a short paragraph introducing the overall project topic that you've selected. So in my previous example, I would talk about online English courses at the community college level. And then I want to know, why are you interested in this topic? You could have picked anything under the umbrella of education. Why this topic specifically? It is okay to use I in your introduction paragraph for your lit review. It's encouraged. I would love to see your subjectivity come out in this paragraph. It's totally fine. You've got your introduction. You've got your 3 summarized paragraphs. When you are summarizing, one of the things to avoid is to just pick 3 articles and summarize each article 1 per paragraph. What a literature review should be doing is showing where authors, scholars, people who have researched this topic, where their ideas are like overlapping. So your goal should be to try and include at least 2 sources per paragraph. It shouldn't just be a source by source summary. Forcing yourself to find 4 or 5 sources will really help to take away the desire to just cite and summarize one article in 1 paragraph and then moving on to the next and the next. One other key thing that I want to see in your lit review. So remember I said that your literature review outside of the formatting had 3 main components: the introduction paragraph, the 3 summary paragraphs, and then one more thing. that one more thing for me are gaps in your research. So what you will do at the end of your paragraphs is just bullet point out a list of at least 3 questions that you still have about your topic after reading the articles that you read. Okay, so like I said, in my example topic, maybe I'm doing online English courses at the community college level. I've looked at feedback, I've looked at student-to-student interaction, and I have looked at discussion forums. But maybe I still have a question about, is gamifying an online English course effective or not? Maybe I still have a question specifically under feedback about engagement and whether feedback should be considered teacher to student engagement or not. So what questions could still exist for you after you've done this research? Now, one of the things that a lot of my students in the past have asked me is, does this have to be a question that has never been researched ever, and I have to do absolutely new, original, completely fresh research? No. It might be, you can ask questions that exist and have been answered, but your literature review did not answer those questions, if that makes sense. So the answer to the question might exist somewhere in research elsewhere that you have not read, but the point here is that you read the lit that you read. It didn't answer these questions, so these questions are still, at this point in your research, unanswered. When you are writing these questions, you will benefit yourself if you think about, can any of these questions be answered by my classmates? So there's, the reason for this is because one of the questions you come up with, one of these gaps in the research, will be the springboard into the next stage of our project. That stage is asking classmates for input and surveying them. If you ask a question that cannot be answered by your classmates, then it might still be a great research question for someone else, but it wouldn't end up being a good research question for you. So here's some examples. A research question that would be great for your classmates would be something like, what is the student's perspective of online versus in-person English courses at the community college level? Your classmates could answer that question because they are students and they have a perspective on that. A question that could not be answered by your classmates might be something like, why has there been an increase in the number of online courses that have been offered in the past 3 years? We could definitely ask our classmates what they think about this, but they couldn't exactly answer that question because that question is outside the scope of a student's perspective. That question takes into consideration funding, location of colleges, administration's perspective on in-person versus online classes, teacher scheduling, chairs when they're making the department schedule. There's so many things that are outside the scope of the student's perspective. So a student might really not be able to answer that question. So keep that in mind when you're coming up with questions. You want to have at least one that could springboard you into a survey for your peers. Okay, so we have our 3 items outside of the formatting. We've got the introduction, those 3 paragraphs where you're reading the literature and summarizing it and reporting back, and then your gaps in your research. But you also need to have that formatting. 3 formatting things to keep in mind that you do want to include in your lit review. You want to practice that APA format cover page. So take a look at the example or go through the book and see how to format an APA cover page. You'll want to have that as the very first page of this document. You'll see that a lot of APA example documents have an abstract page. Yours does not need an abstract. The other 2 items that you do need are APA formatted in-text citations, which we are going to go over before the lit review is due, and then also a references page where you write out the full citation for each of the sources that you've summarized in your lit review. So you'll have somewhere between 3 to 5, whatever you've included. If you read sources that you don't include in your literature review, you do not cite them or on your references page. So let me show you a really quick example and then this video will be over. Here is a literature review that I worked on with a class about a year ago. This one was about the flipped classroom. This is what your literature review should look like in terms of the cover page. You've got just a page number here and then all of your publication information. You will, again, just skip that abstract page for now. We'll put it in later. You'll have your title and then you'll have your little bold header literature review. You want to begin with an introduction where you are introducing the topic and then explaining why you're doing this review, why you're interested in this topic. For me, I focused on the purpose of it, what I was trying to learn more about. And then I went subtopic by subtopic through the research I had. So I looked at, for my first paragraph, I looked at what are the ways in which teachers have tried flipping a classroom. And I found some research on that. And again, like I mentioned before, you'll notice that I've included more than one source in each paragraph. It looks like for this paragraph, for example, I have cited 4 separate sources. That's that synthesis, that's that overlap of ideas where you're finding commonalities between your sources. The next paragraph of review that I've got is what are the theoretical benefits of a flipped classroom? Like in theory, not in practice, but what are the goals or the big dreams of like why this would work? And so I looked at all of the research that I had found on that and I've included it. You'll notice that I have very few quotes in this literature review. A summary, by definition, should really be your own words. It's okay to quote here and there, but too many quotes will get you feedback from me saying, you know, you really kind of want to put some of this into your own words, because too many quotes suggest that maybe you don't actually understand what you're reading. If you can summarize it, that is a way to show understanding. And then I have my final paragraph here, why the flipped classroom does not always work. So I did find some research where people had taken all of the theories on flipping a classroom, tested it out, and then reported back on where some of the issues came up for them, the things that weren't working. That's my shortest paragraph. And then I get into gaps in research. And so I've got more than 3 because I had a lot of questions when I was finished reviewing the literature. It's totally fine if you guys have more than 3 gap questions. I would encourage you to have as many questions as you can, just in case, you know, some of them aren't going to work out for our next stage, then you've got some to fall back on. And then finally, here's a references page. Again, it's all of the sources that you cited in the content of your literature review. Okay, so this covers what is a lit review, what should yours look like, and then here's an example. But if you have any questions, please let me know.